Hi, and welcome back to the kitchen with me, Chef D. Today, I'm going to show you how to make a sweet potato bread pudding. So bread pudding is definitely one of those staples here in the city. We're doing it with sweet potato because it is a holiday time. Let's go over our ingredients and then we'll get right into making the dish. So I have 1 pound of French bread. I have some heavy cream, some whole milk, eggs, brown sugar, granulated sugar, some sweet potato pureed, some butter, a little bit of pumpkin spice mix, some vanilla, and salt. So the first thing that you're going to do is go ahead and preheat your oven to 400 degrees. We're going to bake at 350, but we want to make sure that it's up to temp and it'll stay at temp once we add the bread pudding. You're going to take and grease your baking dish. So with mine, I greased mine with butter, but it's okay to use pan spray. I've already added some of my bread in. We're going to add the rest of the bread into the bowl. And you're just kind of shuffle it around just to smooth it out. Try to make it as even as possible. Next, we're going to work on our liquid mixture. So the first thing we're going to do is add in our eggs and get those beaten. Next, I'm going to add in the sweet potatoes. So I used baked sweet potatoes because they don't retain that much moisture, unlike if you boil them or steam them. But after I bake them and scoop out my middles, I put them in a food processor to puree it. You're just going to give it a mix to make sure that it starts to get mixed very well with the eggs that you have in it already. The next thing you're going to add in is the sugars, both the brown sugar and the granulated sugar. You're going to continue to mix just to make sure everything gets incorporated. Next, I'm going to add in my salt and melted butter. And I'm going to add in the heavy cream and then the milk. Just make sure when you're mixing that you're definitely touching the bottom of your bowl because you don't want to have any of the sweet potatoes settle and not be completely mixed in. Next is the vanilla. And the last thing, it's going to be the pumpkin spice mixture. This is what your mixture is going to look like when it's ready. Everything's nice and mixed in. It's a beautiful consistency. And all we're going to do is pour it on top of our bread cubes. Just an even flow over all of your bread until you have poured in all of your mixture. And yes, you will use it all. Next, you're just going to slightly shift and coat some of the pieces of bread that may not have gotten touched when you were pouring on your sweet potato mix. So now that we have our bread completely covered with the mixture, we're going to let it sit. We're going to let it kind of soak up that sweet potato mixture. It's going to take about 5 minutes. After that time, we're going to press it just slightly, and then we're going to put it in the oven to bake. So now that we've given time for it to kind of soak, you're just going to take your spatula. You're just going to go in and just gently press it. It's almost like you're compacting it. But you're not doing it hard enough to break any of your bread cubes. You're just kind of pushing it down, forcing it to try and take on more of the liquid. Perfect. So this recipe works well if you're going to add pecans as well, and this would be the time to add them. You would just sprinkle them on top. Now let's get it into the oven. It's going to bake 350 degrees for a little over an hour. We're going to kind of check on it about 60 to 65 minutes just to make sure that it's going in the right direction. And by that time, it should only be maybe another 5 to 10 minutes before it's done. Our time is up and the sweet potato bread pudding, it's out of the oven. It's still piping hot, but I'm going to show you really quickly how to check to make sure it's done. The first thing that you're going to do is press on the top for firmness. You want it to feel kind of like Jell-O, but still really firm. And the other thing you're going to do is a knife test. You're going to stick your knife directly into the center of the bread pudding all the way to the end. And when you take out your knife, when you look at it, you want it to be moist, not wet. If it's wet, it's not done and it needs to go back into the oven, usually for another 10 minutes or so. But that's it. Our bread pudding is done. All you have to do now is wait for it to cool. Once it's cool, you're going to cut it up and serve it. I know you're going to love this recipe, and I can't wait for you to come down and visit me at the Southern Food and Beverage Museum.